Right, this time Martin Odegaard.
Zinchenko from Ketia, it's in, it's four. Martinelli tiptoeing in. Predatory, perfect. There is a gorgeous arrogance about Arsenal now.
It really is. They are enjoying every second of this.
Hello and welcome to Not Another Arsenal Podcast, aka the Carl Jenkinson of Arsenal Podcast. My name is Mike Cruz, your host. Today, boys, only for the third time in our lives and in Arsenal's life, for that matter, Arsenal Football Club has reached the semifinals of the Champions League for the third time in their history. Not only did they do it, but they did it in a wildly impressive way. Beating Real Madrid not once, but twice, one at home, one away, for a total of 5-1 aggregate. Killed them overall on XG, killed them on shots, killed them on possession, on everything. It's absolutely insane. We're going to chat a little bit about the meltdown that's going on social media right now, because there's a lot of it's a different perspective, so to say. I find it humorous because social media is like every single one of their fans are like, we got robbed. And Dean had the opportunity to share a room and watch the football game with them. And then you have their coach. You got, Carlito Ancelotti. You got Ceballos saying, oh, no, they just wiped the flipping floor with us. What could we do? So we're going to get in all of that. Before our introductions, I want to do a massive shout out to my good friend, Ryan, a.k.a. Arsbros, Ryan on the Twitters. His beautiful, handsome baby boy, Theo Wright, was born today.
Oh, dang, what a name.
What a name. The man is a stud. Stood there the whole time. He's been in the hospital all flipping day. I told him he had to ask his girl to wait until the podcast started so we could do a whole, oh, she had it during the pod, but unfortunately she couldn't hold the baby. But massive shout out to my good friend Ryan. He has been talking about wanting to be a dad for as long as I know him. So shout out to him.
I mean, can his wife have a baby during our next Champions League game? It seems to be like good luck. So can she get pregnant and gestate in like 2 weeks?
In a few weeks, right? I'll ask. Okay. I'll shoot him a text message for sure. Just wanted to get that out of the way. Big occasion for him. I'm super happy because he's a good friend of mine, and I know he's psyched up. Chat showing him some love. Absolutely love that. Let's get into this. Chris, first and foremost, as always, the introductions. Chris, welcome back. How's it going?
Oh my God, I'm having a great day. Yesterday was tax day. Not my favorite day. The Arsenal came and redeemed this part of the year for me. You notice we're all wearing black, by the way. We did not plan this, but I think subconsciously what we all were. I know, Mike, you wear black every day, but
I'm on brand.
I'm thinking we all wore black because we weren't quite sure. We knew we were gonna be like going to a funeral for somebody. We weren't quite sure who we were going to be going to a funeral for. Let's be honest. But thankfully, this is Real Madrid's funeral, and we are here not to mourn but to celebrate, guys. This is that kind of funeral. We're gonna be here to celebrate the downfall of Real Madrid and the advancing of our one and only Arsenal. So. Yeah, this is going to be a great pod. We wanted Dean, who is about to introduce himself, to come on because this man makes me laugh more than anybody else. And what a day to bring the laughter, bring the chuckle, bring the spirit. It's a day to laugh. It's a day to celebrate. And I'm glad my man Dean is on the pod today.
Absolutely. Which brings us to Dean. Welcome back, dude.
Thank you. Glad to be here again. Love you guys, and definitely hope I can live up to the laughs and the ambiance of the moment of the day. Speaking of funerals, right? Mike sent me the text if I wanted to be on tonight as I was going to my friend's house, and then he's like, as long as we don't lose 5-1. And I was like, if we lose 5-1. The only thing I'm going to jump on today is, probably a pool to drown myself or off a bridge. So, yes, very glad it ended up how it did today.
Glad we had to celebrate. Glad we have to mourn your funeral.
Yes, I am too. Yeah,
it was my only contingency. I don't do a lot of contingency when I invite people on, but I was like, this may or may not be canceled by the end of the night because, quite frankly, we're plastic AF and we can't bring ourselves to
Luckily,
podcasts.
we don't promote the pod early, so no one would know any differently.
Exactly. Big braining. All right, so let's get into it. Now, I wanted to bring up this discussion for dear listeners, if you will, that this is a little bit of a conversation that Chris and I were going back and forth of. So on the socials, I was seeing a lot of multiple big hype on Real Madrid's end. You know, they brought back the Juanito 90 minutes is a long time at Bernabeu. They spoke about Remontada. And they even asked Arteta about it. And Arteta himself said, hey, they kind of earned this belief, if you will, the fact that they thought that they could do it, right? They earned it because this is kind of the history of Real Madrid. Now, in response to those hype videos and, you know, everything that's going on, the tifos and everything, I saw a little Arsenal fan saying, weird fan base, weird behavior, and I couldn't quite connect with it. And I know we haven't been in the quarterfinals for a very long time. We haven't been in a 3-0 up in first leg type of thing situation. And Jamie Carragher kind of said this, where 1 week ago when we beat them 3-0, he said, every single person that does not support Arsenal thinks they're through already. Every single Arsenal supporter is kind of, let's get this job done type of thing. I was just taken aback about the response of the Arsenal supporters. And yes, I know social media Arsenal supporters, I should say it like that, of like calling it weird. And I like to believe that, like, if the first leg was in France and we lost 2-0, I would like to believe that Arsenal would kind of equal that type of level of hype, saying that we could make a comeback. So what's your input on this? I know that you were, and I'm not saying much here by saying you were one of the supporters taking the piss out of Real Madrid because, you know, you make a sport.
I take the piss out of everybody. I'm an equal piss taker.
You're an equal opportunity piss taker for sure, Chris. But it's just something I figured, hey, you know, we spoke about it a little bit throughout the week, and why not talk about it during the pod? Have at it, man. Mike is all yours.
Well, we were just talking about this off air right before we came on, in that we had a heart-to-heart. I think where I'm coming around on it is that you have a very historical view of Real Madrid, which I don't possess. You have a lot of great 80s and 90s kind of football connection. You often bring up the old Milan teams. You talk about players that you watched in that era that frankly I didn't, because I wasn't watching football back then, not until the late 90s. And so you connect with that differently. A lot of this is very historical from Real Madrid's side. I, as someone who's coming at it more from an outsider perspective, who isn't used to seeing the PR machine that is Real Madrid when they are up against a wall, and that's smeared by the fact that Arsenal hasn't played Real Madrid that often in the past. I think this is our fourth meeting in the Champions League ever, so not a lot. Man, I found the amount and the nature of the PR to just be extraordinary, I guess, to say it like as a very appreciative way of saying it. But, you know, honestly, I found it to be a bit weird. And I tweeted a collage today that someone else pulled together. One of the aggregator accounts on X posted, and I reposted it. And this is what it is. And you probably can't read it, but this is just like a very small collection of the absurdity that was tweeted in between the time that we beat them last week and today. And it was things like, oh, Ancelotti's wearing his wool jacket. It's a myth. It's a talisman that brings him confidence. And like, oh, the Real Madrid youth players are going to walk down the aisle before the senior players board the bus. You know, it's ritual. All these rituals are going to make us be, you know, are going to make us complete the remontada. And, you know, the last time Real Madrid played a Champions League knockout game at the Bernabeu during Holy Week, they did a comeback against an English team. Like, and then it was all the videos, and it was it's that El cheering, whatever that guy is, Chiringuito.
Chiringuito, yeah. That guy, man, he's a drama
weird. So weird. And like asking Jude Bellingham, like, what's the word that was talked about most in the dressing room? Oh, it felt felt like a put on it. It felt like a script. It felt like the players, especially the ones that maybe aren't Spanish, like a Jude Bellingham, who's obviously English, felt like he was put up to say, like, to respond in that way. They even like spent, like, all the Spanish journalists in Arteta's pre-match press conference, all they could ask him about was the remontada. They're going to make a comeback. What do you have to, are you afraid? Is your team afraid? Like, that's all they could ask him about. They didn't ask him about the game. They didn't ask him about what tactics are you going to use. They didn't ask about, like, how are you going to deal with the intense pressure. They didn't ask him any, like, kind of sensible question. It was all this mythological, talismanic, like, BS that surrounds this club. And I get it. They've won the Champions League 15 times. I get it. They're the biggest club in Europe. But the PR acts like they've never been beaten before. The PR acts like we didn't stand a chance. The PR was acting like, like Arsenal is going to come in and they're going to lose it, and it's just a foregone conclusion. I just found it cringe, man. I don't know about you. I found it cringe. That's just me.
Okay. Yeah, I think what happened with me personally is I summed up some of the, I'm going to qualify them as the weirder things, like the wool vest thing with Ancelotti. I think, like, I start thinking Michael Jordan used to wear his North Carolina shorts into the Bulls shorts. Milan, again, I follow Milan a lot. When they make it to a final, like a cup final, they almost exclusively, they always try to wear their white kit because they believe the white kit brings good luck. So in my mind, I was kind of like, these kind of quirky, weird things already exist. I was gonna mention the and you guys would know this because you guys both watch basketball more than me, definitely. The gentleman, the manager, coach that won like five championships with Kobe and the Lakers, Jackson.
Oh, yeah, Phil Jackson.
Phil Jackson. There's all types of weird stories about him. About,
he's
like,
a weirdo, for sure.
Like lighting incense and shit in the stadium in the locker room. So I guess I kind of looked at all that weird shit and be like, nah, they do weird shit. They believe in the word, like, so when somebody says I have a lucky vest, I'm like, sure you do, bro. I'm sure you wore that vest at one point in time and some good shit happened and you're like, you know what? That's it for me. So I and with the historical context, as you said, Chris, because I used to watch Madrid considerably more, almost equal to Arsenal, but I've kind of fallen off of La Liga in general. But I know a few, like some of the tweets they were doing, it was like historical tweets and quotes from past players. Mm-hmm. So maybe because of that, I was kind of like, oh, cool. I would be romanticizing about that too if I was Madridista, right? So maybe that's where our perspectives clash so much. And then social media did, quite frankly, take it to a whole new level, right? Because in Spain you have the Chiringuito show, you have, it's either Marca or AS that's pro Madrid. One is pro Madrid, one is pro Barca. I can't remember.
Barca, yeah.
Yeah, and then you have the Real Madrid account doing its thing in general. So that's and
there's a bunch of other ones like Madrid Extra, Madrid Universal. I mean, there's
those have been popping up all over my timeline. So that was a little bit of the social media scene. Fortunately for us, we have a gentleman on the podcast tonight that had the opportunity to watch the game and go to the game with somebody that is a Madridista. And Dean, what was your friend? Feel free to throw him under the bus by name, first, last, and address. What was his feeling going into the game? And I guess if you give me a play-by-play on his reaction to the entire game and the play out and how everything went for him.
So I watched both legs with him and another one of his friends who's also a Madrid fan. The first leg was just kind of the shock of the Rice goals, right? Not really understanding where that came from, and pretty much they're like, that's pure luck, right? He's a professional footballer. Yeah, he meant to do it, but that's not his game. He's not a free kick taker. It's not like Cristiano, who's done it, or Leo Messi, who's done it, hundreds of times. So you expect it, right? So they were just kind of shocked after that first leg of, what happened, right? This is not real. And then the play up into this one was, I'd say they're pretty confident that they could come back. And, getting back to the, what you're saying about Carragher, how Arsenal fans are kind of, we'll believe when we see it. yeah, it was some of that for me personally, but then you have the other things of, or what, 500 plus days without giving up two goals in a competitive match.
Yeah.
And all these defensive stats that we have, and it's kind of playing into that aura of Real Madrid and the Bernabeu versus what's been going on this year. And once the lineups came out, which is kind of what I think they kind of expected and I kind of expected in terms of moving Valverde back into the midfield, bringing on Vasquez, being a little bit more attacking. They're like, the first 10, 15 minutes we can get a goal, then it's game on, which it probably would have been. But the game played out how it did, and as the game was going on, it was just more of complaining about the ref and his kind of handling and decisions. A lot of it
makes sense.
I'm sure we'll get into later, but by the second half and by the time Saka scored, I mean, they were on their phones. They weren't even watching anymore. It was already tied over. So, so that's kind of how that went.
Did you knee slide in front of them in the living room or wherever you were? I hope
almost. So I did whenever Saka did actually score. I got up, did a little Marino lap around at his table.
Yes.
And they were just kind of, it was over for them for sure.
Lovely. Just because the way you described the fact that they were like looking at their phones by the time Saka scored, it was insane. I think Charles Watts mentioned this as well because he was at the game where the noise level in the stadium was absolutely insane, right? And as you said, the first couple of minutes, I think it's a fair assessment to say that roughly the first 15 minutes they had the lion's share of everything. They were on top of us, and Arsenal were trying to just ride the wave, so to say. Mm-hmm. It was loud, but you could tell, dude, as especially in the second half, they came out with a little bit of a boost, but like minute 50 hit, 55, and you could almost just hear the noise level just downgrading little by little. So it was.
I heard Gunnersaurus broke into like the AV room and he turned the volume down on the audio that they pumped in. That's what I heard.
He opened up the roof so the noise.
Yes, exactly.
Was going by. Absolutely. So let's get into the penalty shouts that Dean referred to. We'll do the Real Madrid one first, or the Arsenal one first for you, Chris, and we'll go with Madrid to Dino here. But I took the, I guess, unpopular one because I did have a few people tell me that it was a penalty.
Including myself. Including myself.
Including you. Okay. So I'm gonna preface my point of view with saying that maybe because now that I've shifted to almost exclusively watching Arsenal.
Yeah.
My expectation for things are different with refereeing. And that would have qualified to me as we see that in every corner. If that's a penalty, everything's a penalty. So I'm so used to those tugs not being called that's my son asking me for water despite being next to his mother.
Hey, he gave you 18 minutes of solitude, Mike.
That is true. Yeah, he's getting better. I'm just not used to seeing those penalties. So when we played on for a few seconds, they called it back for VAR. I was just absolutely amazed. Here, I'll stop ranting, Chris. I'll let you take on. I'm going to scream at my 3-year-old. All right, you do that.
Yeah. I am with you in terms of the fact that I'm used to not seeing it given, but I'm also appalled every time it's not given, because if you're on a corner and you're making a run to a post and somebody's gonna, I mean, I've seen Gabriel get his shirt almost taken off of him. I've seen people get clotheslined. Tomiyasu and Maguire comes to mind a couple years ago. We've seen people, hog-tied when they're trying to go up for a header, nothing called. And so perhaps my perspective was, I'm so glad that, one of those is punished finally, because I don't think I want to see it defended that way. I think I want to see, and obviously there's going to be contact. You know, there's a lot going on in the box. You're not going to get like, it's not going to be like, I'm trying to think of a sport where like if you were to do something like someone would get massively penalized. Like it's not ping pong or like, I don't know, tennis or something. There's going to be contact, but when you grab a guy's shirt and then you put your arm around the guy so that you don't even allow him to make a run toward a post, I think it's obstruction. And I think more of that should be called. Now, the question is it enough to overturn it? Because the ref was called over to the monitor. He looks at it and overturns the call and makes it a call. And for me, I can go, I can sympathize with the perspective that perhaps that's not enough to overturn the call. But I think, again, in England, they use the monitor so seldom, and VAR is really just there to support whatever the referee's decision is on the pitch, that it's almost like I'm applauding the fact that there is a federation that is willing to use the technology they have at their disposal and to at least give the on-field ref a second chance to look at something that he might have missed. I feel like that's the way to do it, such that, you know, none of this clear and obvious crap. Like if you in the VAR think there could be a foul there, and it's a fairly obvious foul that's been missed, send the ref over to the monitor. If the ref says, you know what, I still don't think it's a foul, you got to support that. But I think I'm tired of how the PGMOL does it, and therefore when I saw a federation use the technology in a way that I feel like it should be used, and I know I'm saying this and it advantaged Arsenal, or at least in theory it did. We missed the penalty. I have to applaud it because it gives me some hope that perhaps in some alternate universe, in some future where Howard Webb, I'm going to start calling him, is not head of the PGMOL, that maybe there's a fighting chance that, you know, we're going to see more of that kind of behavior in the Premier League. But so, yeah, I think that's probably where my perspective comes from. I can't divorce my disappointment in how it's being used in England from the fact that in a UEFA competition, they seem to be doing it correctly.
I've been so battered and bruised by the PGMOL that I convinced myself that it wasn't a penalty, and you're still kind of willing, like, to go out there and extend, you know, like,
you know me, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm persistent and stubborn, and people will give up well before I give up on stuff. So you see me on social media. Some dude like wants to banter back with me, and I'll keep going for hours. And you guys are like, "What the hell are you doing?"
Yeah, I'm in the back channel saying, "Chris, cut it out like 10 times throughout the day." Absolutely. One thing I will say that I applaud myself personally on this federation, the manner that they use the VAR is the threshold and calling the ref over to make his own decision by viewing the monitor. It seems to be considerably lower.
Yes.
Like, it's just like, did he get called to the screen? I want to say 3 times, maybe during the game, maybe 2.
Twice.
But the fact that it was like, hey, real quick, just go have a check. And yes, the second one, we will discuss that. Did take a really long time. I was just kind of thrilled of how fast it was. Dean, let's talk about the actual penalty. Bukayo Saka's penalty, that is, and his execution. Effectively, initially it was Odegaard was getting ready, and hey, Arteta has said this many a times that they have the liberties to do with whatever the heck they want, and if they feel good about it, like look at Declan Rice in the first leg. If they feel good about it, go ahead, have at it. Everything indicated that Bukayo Saka was on one because he was probing, and he was doing a really good job taking off shots. But this penalty, man, if it was supposed to be a Panenka, one of the most poorly executed Panenkas that I've ever seen. So how was your mood? What do you think he was thinking in that moment?
Well, it's funny because as Odegaard was holding the ball, standing over it, I was yelling at the screen from to hand it to Saka because I did not want Odegaard to take it.
It's your fault, Dean.
And then he gives it to Saka, and I'm like, okay, good. Take your time. I think it was last year. I don't think we missed a penalty, right? We had a pretty good run on penalties for a while there. And it was a pretty odd one to take, right? And like they said, if it was a Panica, he didn't really get enough height on it for Courtois, and Courtois is probably not the type of keeper to try to do that against. It just really didn't feel like he was too confident over it for whatever reason, which was kind of odd because, like you said, he definitely had a shot, I think, on target already and had a couple runs at Alaba, already got Alaba booked. So he's who I would have wanted to take it, right? And who I think probably most Arsenal fans wanted to see. And, you know, for him, it's what he'll learn from and hopefully come back and bury the next one.
Yes, absolutely. It was something else. I guess that my biggest pet peeve, if I were to say something, is that it was angled. It wasn't straight through the middle. Yeah. So Courtois bit, he dived, but if he would have gone through the middle, substantially better possibility of actually going in. But it was nice and refreshing to see that did not stop the team. They didn't put their head down. We speak about this a lot. Their mentality monsters and the perspective within the club in general has changed. So it was pretty massive. But bad miss shortly after, Chris. Something as we just praised VAR, I did think about 5 to 6 minutes of VAR reviews was a little excessive on this one.
Agreed.
And there's still, I don't know if you found any clarifications, but to my knowledge, I'm still seeing two different sources. One says the penalty and the rescinded yellow card for Declan Rice was because of an offside, and the other one is saying because it was not a foul. So I personally haven't seen clarification on it. Maybe you came across it. Maybe anybody in the live chat has. Overall, penalty goes to Madrid. Mbappe seemingly, to my perspective, was lesser of a foul, and he dived. Declan Rice back in the semifinals after being out of the semifinals for roughly 5 to 10 minutes, which was entertaining in itself. Shitting bricks at this moment for the VAR review. Are you feeling fairly certain that the call was a good call, assuming it wasn't an offside call? But like, did Mbappe over embellish the contact and went down a little too easy?
I mean, as Rice said in his post-match interview, he says, "I'm an honest guy, I never lie," and I said it was not a foul, so that's good enough for me, to be honest. Sorry, that was a homer.
I sold. I know. I was laughing. I was just still muted. I was like, sold. I'll take that.
He's close. He actually did say that, but I mean, if you guys watched the whole game, which I know we all did, I think one of Madrid's plans was whenever they felt contact was to go down. And what I loved about the majority of this referee's performance was that he was not buying it. He was calling fouls for the most part on legitimate fouls, and he was telling players to get up when they throw themselves to the ground. And I think this was a case where he got duped a little bit by Mbappe. I think he saw Rice touching Mbappe in the box when the cross is coming in. But to be honest, like, every defender is going to have an arm on a guy when something's going in, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to feel for where the guy's at, because you want to look at the ball, but you also want to know where your man is. It's a lot like in basketball when you're boxing somebody out. Shot goes up. You want to make sure you've got an arm somewhere so you know where the guy is. And that's, in my mind, that's legal in soccer. It happens all the time. What I think Mbappe does is he puts his arms inside of where Rice's are, so it looks like Declan's got a hold of his arms. And then as the ball gets closer, he throws himself to the ground. And so you can see why perhaps a ref gets duped, especially when he's already overturned a missed penalty in favor of the opponent, and you're at a place like the Bernabeu, and you've got 100,000 fans yelling at you, 80,000 fans yelling at you. But I think it's another good use of VAR in that he's asked to go back to the monitor. He has a second look, and he realizes, and again, to your point, your question, Mike, I'm not actually sure if it's offside or not. I would assume that if it was offside, they wouldn't have asked him to go to the monitor, because they would have had the technology to deem that offside already. So I don't think in the end the official call is that it was deemed offside. I think what the official call is that they deemed it not to be enough for a penalty. and they overturned it and therefore rescinded the yellow card on Rice. So I don't know to be sure, but that's my understanding of the rules, that they wouldn't need the ref to go over to the monitor if it was a simple offside call that was missed on the field. So yeah, again, I think it was the right call. But I understand if people think about it and do it differently, because again, we've been trained in the Premier League to think that the threshold for overturning something is really, really high. And I'm guessing if this was a Premier League match and Real Madrid was a team in the Premier League, I mean, this was a regular season game in the league, that both of those penalties, both those calls would have stood, based on the way that the PGMOL officiates games. So, and again, we've all been conditioned to believe that is the case, that's sort of the MO of how they operate. So yeah, I think they got it right, and I applaud the refs again for using the technology in the correct way and making it a proper decision. But again, I'm an Arsenal fan, so of course I'm going to feel that way.
Well, Dean, coming to you, one thing that rounding off the conversation between the referee decisions and VAR. Actually, I got one more after this one. I got to get off my chest. With the amount of time that they asked the ref twice and seemingly fairly quick to go to the monitor and check something, did they make mention about the Rudegaard stomp? And I personally, as an Arsenal supporter, sure, I'm going to qualify it as a Rudegaard stomp. To me, it looked incredibly, intentional, and somehow it slipped through, and nobody called it. It was not a yellow, and it was not called for VAR. And I'm over here left scratching my head. We're like, in my head, I had already justified the non-penalty on Arsenal, the penalty for Real Madrid, and somehow this is the one where I'm aggrieved on, the one that everybody just completely seemingly ignored. So, intentional, Dean?
Yeah, it looked like it, right? And he's one of those players who, you're probably thinking it probably is, right? He's kind of one of those dark arts guys, and I thought he probably had about 3 or 4 fouls that could have been carded, and he walked away with one finally in 86, 87 minutes, something like that. So he was well on his way. Maybe it was the too early, yellows on Asensio and Alaba that the ref was a little bit hesitant about. It's hard to say, but yeah, I would say in terms of the Real Madrid fans' ire at the ref, a lot of that dissipates with how Rudiger got away with, probably at least 2 at minimum yellows, if not a straight red with that stop. Going back to the 2 penalties too, it's hard to, kind of like Chris was saying, it's hard to justify or know how to feel as someone who watches a lot of PGMOL, right? Because when they originally called the Asensio foul, I had no clue what it was for, and it was so far behind. 3-4 minutes later, you're like, "What's going on?" Right? And then they start showing it, and we see that every week, and it's like, well, if they're calling him to the monitor, my feeling is it's going to be given, right? They're not just going to call him over and not do it. And they're like, no, there's no way. That's, it's not a foul. I'm like, that's a foul, right? But again, we see it so often, it's one of those to where if they didn't get called, we would have never known. They probably would have never showed the replay, and the game would have gone on. The Mbappe one was a little bit more, I think in the end, the right call was called, and I'm one who really wants VAR to be used to get the right call, but it almost seems like it was a re-refereeing of the decision, right? What was given on the field, as our favorite Twitter referee likes to tell us, holds weight, and apparently holds a lot of weight. And I thought it was a little bit silly of Rice to even get in that position, because I don't think Mbappe was going to get to that ball.
It holds so much weight. It has type 2 diabetes. It's obese. My God. It's enormous. Sorry.
No, yeah, it's definitely in England at least. Yeah, it's your typical American, right? But
Texan, excuse me.
Right, wherever the the referee was from. I think he's French. Again, like you said, I think at the end we got to the right call. I don't think there was probably enough to give a penalty in what Rice did, but I was honestly shocked that we got 2 VAR calls in the Bernabeu in a game they had to win. I was telling my friend, I guess Perez must be short on cash because his checks are bouncing, because this is not the type of refereeing that I would expect. But they probably got both calls right at the end of the day. So, like you said, you got to applaud that. It's just what we're not used to as Arsenal fans.
Sorry, I was Google searching something because you made a point, Dean, that it carries so much weight in England, and I just thought about something, and I Google searched it, and it is a coming together from multiple referees from multiple leagues. So there's not that stigma of that exists in the PGMOL that I don't want to make my friend look bad. My friend said this, and that's what it is, and I'm going to fucking twist reality in order to accommodate whatever the best referee in England says, because he's my superior, and what the hell am I going to do about it, right? So I was Google searching as you were speaking, and I'm like, damn, that's a really good point, in which maybe people in the VAR room were like, I don't know this fucking guy. I'm just telling him to review it because in my perspective, he was wrong, and there's no feelings. There's no David Coote cover up. There's nothing. You know what I mean? So like, it's refreshing, and maybe that's exactly the reason why we see so many more callbacks on the whole VAR thing. The last thing I was going to talk about the refs. Were you going to come in, Chris?
I was going to say that's a beautiful, well-made point there, that there isn't this good old boys club that all feel like they have to rally around each other to support whatever their mate does on the pitch. That they're able to disentangle themselves from that social bias and to just see the game for what it is. That they're able to see it more objectively when it's a collection of referees that don't know each other that well than it is when you've got guys who've been refereeing together for ages. Well made.
Absolutely. No, the only other reference on the referees that I wanted to make, I thought it was interesting, and it's because our good mate AJ made the comment of how long will it take before Raya gets carded for time wasting. Here's the thing, guys. I'm 110% behind carding somebody when they're wasting time. And if that's what the ref truly believed in, I'm okay with that. It was just astronomically shocking to me that it happened like in the 36th minute. I literally, that has to be the earliest goalkeeper yellow for time wasting in the history of football. I think at the very least, because normally it's more of a 95th minute. Okay, listen, bro, you've took it too far here. And I'm like, that's cute, but fucking Brentford already pissed off, like 30 minutes of this fucking game time wasting. So what is the point now? So it was refreshing in a way, bullshit in another way, but I'm super pro that, and I'm generally curious to see the shitstorm that PGMOL is going to happen with. I think they gave goalkeepers 15 seconds for next year, something like that. They're going to put like a hard stop for like yellow cards. I'm interested to see when Raya gets booked at seventh second or something. But
they're instituting that 8-second rule, aren't they? Where they're going to give the opposing team a corner kick if the goalkeeper holds onto the ball for more than 8 seconds. So it's going to be a rule for like a month, and then they're going to forget to.
Yeah, until we get penalized for it like 4 times, and then they'll forget about it
and drop 9 points. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I mean, I think we watched Emi Martinez pretty much fuck the ground and ejaculate a couple times and not get carded for it, right? Like he's a team of like time wasting, and he never gets carded for it. I was yelling every time Miles was taking a throw-in to throw the damn ball too, because I know he likes to take his time, and they love to card him for it in England. So it was also kind of refreshing to see him not get a card for doing what everyone else does. And I think even we didn't get 2 foul throws, which the commentators were pretty happy about, that actually still a thing that, again, apparently only we get carded or called for. But yeah.
Was Timber wearing a Bellerin shirt, by the way? Is that I only thought that Bellerin was the one that got foul throws called on him. Apparently it's not just Bellerin.
No.
Yeah. Miles is the new Bellerin, and all the
Oh man, Kelly's gonna hate
he
you.
hated on all at once. So unfortunately, you guys have covered that, and we're gonna have to get his bias changed quick, fast, in a hurry, because he's not going anywhere for a while.
Yep, that's right.
All right, fair enough. I did 40 minutes worth of bitching about the referee, so let's get to the more fun stuff, if you guys will. We continue to knock on that door, Chris. One thing that I found absolutely refreshing in a way that, and Saliba said it after the first game, we said we weren't going to go there to defend, we were going to go there to attack. And, you say that after a game, and you're like, yeah, sure you are, chump. They went there into attack. Like, Saka was an absolute fucking pain in the ass the entire time. And he did well, along with Martinelli, which we'll get to Martinelli because Avril was in the live chat, and I need to eat humble pie for in front of him so that he could justify staying up late tonight. But Bukayo Saka ultimately, Chris, the whole penalty miss didn't affect him too much. He continued to play a brilliant game and ultimately played off with Rice with the pre-assist, and I'm inserting Rice into the conversation because he's been insane the last two games. But funny enough, Merino with his second assist of this tie, which I found amazing. What a striker he become. But Bukayo Saka, man, as clean as a finish as you could possibly get. This is minute 70 something. Somebody's gonna have to refresh my memory. There you go, 72, 73, if I'm not mistaken. And I lose my shit. I scare my child. My wife asks me if I'm okay. And we are off to the races officially on aggregate 4-0, game 1-0. And I'm thinking to myself, I just didn't want to lose by 3-0. I just didn't want to lose 4-0. How the shit is Arsenal winning at the Santiago Bernabeu one more time?
Yeah, I think the story of this particular goal after missing the penalty is actually a story that began in the Euros when he misses the penalty in the final, because he tries the audacious penalty in this game with the Panenka. I don't know why he kicks it to the left, but he does. I've never seen a Panenka done to one of the other sides. It's usually right down the middle, and he doesn't do that. And I think a younger, more immature, less headstrong Saka, who hasn't had a lot of adversity to overcome, might crumble under that situation. But this is 23, 24-year-old Saka. This is a guy who's gone through a ton. He just overcame a nasty hamstring injury. He took the burden of a lot of pushback and blowback post-Euros about missing that penalty. He missed a crucial penalty against West Ham in the league, I think, a couple of years ago, which a lot of people, at least on social media, who knows if he sees it, gave him a lot of crap for, and reminded him of, again, his penalty miss in the Euro. So I think there's a lot of stuff that preceded this match that has made Saka, I think, the resilient kind of player that we see him to be today. So that happens. He misses the penalty in the first half. I don't know if you guys saw that Danny Carvajal tried to intimidate him going into the tunnel at halftime. Mm-hmm. Danny Carvajal says something to him. Saka keeps walking down the tunnel. Carvajal grabs him by the back of his neck, and Saka turns around and looks like he's about to punch his lights out. And then Ben White has to come in and intervene. But Saka's not taking anything from anybody, and they tried to intimidate him. They tried to roughhouse him like a lot of teams try and do, and he just continues to play his game. He doesn't let people get into his head. He doesn't let people intimidate him. And so when he scores that goal, and it's a lovely bit of movement, it's also a lovely find and touch pass from Merino. I was actually surprised that he knew to dink it over the goalkeeper, because in that spot, when you're making that run, that diagonal run, kind of away from the center of the goal, your first instinct might be to take a touch or take a dribble, not knowing that the goalkeeper is right there. And I think Saka has the wherewithal to not only know that the pass is coming and to make the right run, but also to look to his right out of the corner of his eye and to see that the goalkeeper is making a run at him, who's trying to close down that angle, and he's actually going down to ground to try and anticipate a low shot. And he just takes it first time and dinks it over the goalkeeper. So I think that finish was a lot more difficult than maybe it looked. But so, yeah, the finish was amazing. You felt like if we were going to take anything from the game in terms of a win or a draw, that Saka was going to be involved. And he's the guy that, for so many goals that we've scored, important goals for Arsenal over the last 3 years, he is often the guy that gets the first goal. And we know the first goal is so important. And it came in the 65th minute. So who knows if we don't score that goal and Vinny scores that goal 2 minutes later and it's still whatever it would be then, it would be a 2-goal advantage. Maybe that tie ends differently, but Saka puts it away. Marino with a beautiful, I think we have to give Marino his flowers too, maybe at some point, but the guy's got 3 goals and assists over the 2 games. Who knew that was going to come from Marino, who's basically a DM turned false 9. He was the best forward. I mean, he was the best forward not named Saka on the pitch. Even better than Mbappe, Vinny Jr. and Rodrigo. So we only paid 35 million for him. We wouldn't have said that 3 or 4 months ago. We were all wondering why Arteta bought this player. And it took a Havertz injury, it took a Jesus injury for us to see the mad scientist in Arteta converting a DM to a false 9 striker, having such a pivotal role in such a big, huge tie against Real Madrid, having that kind of end goal impact. It's astounding, honestly. I can't think of another player since maybe Wenger turned Lauren from I think he was a midfielder or a winger into a right back. And I remember when Lauren came to the club and Wenger's like, I think you can make a really good right back. And Lauren's like, really? And then he basically made Lauren into one of the best right backs this club has ever seen. I'm not saying that that's the trajectory of Marino. I think Marino will return to the midfield next season when we bring in, another striker. But we know that he can do a job. Maybe he comes in off the bench some games next year and plays false 9 when we need that kind of profile, when maybe, Havertz needs a break. He's unlocked something in a player that's 28, 29 that is hard to do, because normally by 28, 29, you are who you are. And he's unlocked something new in this player that I don't think any of us saw. So kudos to Marino, kudos to Saka. I think that was tie over once we got that first goal.
Yeah, I'm sure it was a major buzzkill. And Dean, you got to witness it live, of course. I assume, unfortunately for you, you were still buzzing and celebrating and taking your celebratory shot at the bar when Saka goals went in, right when Vinny Jr. scored. And we saw something that doesn't happen a whole lot. We were just praising Saliba because he had a few just, putting Mbappe in his pocket type of moments. But what a brain fart, if you will. The memes were excellent. That was Saliba throwing away a goal on purpose to get Fiorentina Perez off of his tail because he doesn't want him anymore. But it was caught between two minds. I'm not entirely sure if he was expecting Raya to get back to his post to his goal, to make that back pass. But very uncharacteristic of Saliba. But he holds on to the ball a little bit too much. He tries to move the ball forward, but by that time, Vinny Jr. had already caught up to him, took the ball, slots it in. Now, 1-1, we're still in an excellent position. What was the mood? How surprised, how shocked were you when you saw Saliba, brain fart, if you will?
Yeah, I was still celebrating the soccer goal. I didn't even see it happen live. I think I was on the phone, in the group chat, talking to everyone. And then, there wasn't even a reaction from my friends. They're like, yeah, whatever, consolation goal type of thing.
Oh, wow.
I saw the replay and I was like, what in the hell happened? Saliba just did that. So yeah, like you said, he got caught, and whether it was no one helping him out, letting him know Vinny Jr. was running him down or, just taking too long on the ball. It's a mistake that we probably won't see him make, hopefully, for probably a very long time again. But yeah, they really didn't have much help at that point. I think it was, probably close to the 70th minute by that point, and, it was more of a consolation goal than anything. Going back to, talking about us coming in and playing defensively, I think a funny stat is after the game, Vasquez made a comment about how we didn't do anything in the first half, and we played very defensively, but they had no shots on goal in the first half, and we had 3 or 4. I think Courtois made 3 saves at that point. So for a game that they have to win at home, they went the first 45 minutes without a shot on goal. So it, just how, we play as a team and how we kind of constrict the game, and, like they say, just like a python or a boa constrictor, you just slowly drain the life out of others. And that's how we play. And even against a team like Madrid, and I think going forward, PSG is probably a pretty good comparable team to them, right? They're pretty good in attack, at least on paper, and maybe a little bit light defensively. So it should be, kind of the same way. And, like they say, defense with championships, and we definitely have one of the best, if not probably the best in world football right now.
Without us,
go ahead.
I was going to say, without us giving them that opportunity, that goal opportunity that Vinny puts away, they have like 0.6 XG for the entire game. In the first leg, they had
it was 0.55 the first game, and then the first half is like 0.11. So
yeah, but
0.6 through 3 halves.
Yeah, but without that opportunity that we gifted them, they've got well below 1 XG. I think Vinny Jr.'s goal is like something like 0.69 XG. So same of the time, someone's going to score on that opportunity. I mean, we just give them nothing, and this is typical Arsenal that we give them nothing. But whenever the team gets something, we typically give it to them, and they typically take it and convert it. And luckily, that didn't happen in the 30th minute. It happened in the 70th minute. Because I think if that happened in the 30th minute, I would have been taking anti-diarrheal medicine, because I was I would have been absolutely bricking it at the 30th minute. But 70th minute, a lot of calamitous stuff has to go wrong for them to, score 3 goals and make it competitive again. So, yeah, it is what it is. I mean, it happens. You're under immense pressure. What do you guys think about who's at fault for that? Do you think Raya should have played that pass into Saliba where he was at? Do you think Saliba should have been more aware of what was around him and got rid of the ball quicker? Like, I've seen people argue back and forth. I'm curious what you guys think.
I'll go real quick, Dean, before you cut in and say something actually smart. I hate French people. That's why Sebi's not on the podcast.
Is that what happened to Sebi?
That's why Sebi's not here anymore.
Clip that, Abadel. Tag Sebi on that, all right, buddy? Go for it, Dean.
That was it.
My real answer to that is it's a 50-50 thing, but similar to, we were having a conversation with Saka and I think Martinelli in our TM groups, and it said, I essentially said Saka doesn't get the same hate, and I just said that's where the credit in the bank comes in. And credit in the bank on these two is very high, but I also think people have their favorites. And if you're in the Raya's the top 5, top 3 goalkeeper in the league, you're going to criticize Saliba. If you're in the Willow is a prodigy, you're going to kind of criticize Raya. So I kind of feel like the social media conversation in general is a little divided in favoritism, and we all do it. I'm a big believer that nobody could separate themselves from their own bias. And, again, I alluded to the Martinelli thing. There's been plenty of people praising him, and I slanted the mofo for about 90 plus minutes, right? So I already have a negative way of viewing him. And today I read a few comments and saw a few compilations that maybe turned my mind a little bit, but I do think that plays a big part. I'm not overly bothered. I think Raya played the pass. Yes, he was a little bit out of position compared to where he normally is. Will look to his left where Raya should have been. He wasn't there, so he tried to move back. And I guess I'll say good on Vinny for reacting as fast as he did. And so that's my overall arching real response, other than, bald French people aren't allowed on the podcast anymore.
So, I mean, it's hard because I'm in the camp that in the current form, Raya is probably one of the best keepers in the world right now. And Saliba is probably one of the best center backs. So, for my bias, I'm going to blame Mustafi for it, because everything bad that's ever happened to Arsenal is because of him.
He would have, if that was him, he would have raised his hand for offside after the goal.
He would have been on the ground, raised it for offside.
Offside to pointing to Raya. That's the exact move.
Yep. We saw it so many times, right? I think if you're going to give anybody, maybe Saliba. I think he got caught on the ball a little bit too close. But like I was saying earlier, it didn't seem like anybody gave him help either, right? I don't think anybody was probably letting him know that Vinny was so close and closing him down. Like he said, he was surprised. So it's one of those things that happens. It's like Chris said, it's glad that it happened in the 70th minute when we're up 4-0 on aggregate versus, the 5th minute, and then we're really in the shit for the rest of the game. So, like I said, at least with the Madrid fans I was around, they viewed it as pure consolation, and it really didn't give them too much hope because they had already witnessed the first 70 minutes of limp attacking and even going back to the first leg. So it was more of a formality at that point.
I tend to agree with you guys. I think it's probably more a Saliba era than Raya. I think I wanted Arsenal to be brave on the ball in this game, because I think it's an easy trap to fall into when you're nervous and when you're trying to protect a lead, is just to hoof the ball long. And the problem with that is that you can't win every second ball. You might not even win most of the first balls, but the second ball is really important. And with a team like Madrid, you're going to have waves of attack coming at you over and over again. And eventually, if Madrid has the ball in your final third for long enough, they're going to score. And so I wanted us to be brave, because I wanted us to be able to progress the ball at the pitch, because they can't press. Their front three do not press. And when they don't press, there's going to be holes, whether that means that your back line can progress the ball at the pitch by dribbling, or whether that means that you're going to have longer to pick out a pass from a runner from midfield or from deep. You're going to be able to progress the ball at the pitch a lot easier than if you're pressed. And so I didn't want us to just hook the ball long. And in that case, and maybe one of the few times where actually it probably would have been appropriate would have been for either Raya to just play the ball long and not to Saliba in that situation, knowing that there was some players that were close to him, or for Saliba to be aware of, maybe do another look over his shoulder or take another picture and realize that, there are players near him where he should probably just one touch that back to Raya, and Raya hoofs it long. But again, it's easy for us to say in our armchairs, having all the angles and being able to look at it in slow motion and all that stuff, to say like he should have done that. Sometimes that stuff happens, and when you play that kind of playing out from the back strategy and mentality, and you've got a quick player like Vinny who times it really well, sometimes that stuff kind of happens, and luckily it didn't bite us. But yeah, I agree.
Love it. Welcome, Barry, to the live chat. Appreciate you guys coming through. There's a few people here that aren't regulars, so to say, that are showing up tonight. But hey, big win. And I'll say this. I'm glad to see so many new faces on such a positive night, because normally new faces in podcasting happens to like, I want to see somebody rant and lose their shit type of thing. So,
I think this guy Magic Mike, is that his name? I think he's here for the rants, though. So I don't know. I don't want to let him down. I want to
Magic Mike is living his best life, and I'm sure this man will be in Germany if Arsenal do qualify for the finals. By the way, I did 100% half make a haha flying to Germany joke to my wife, like haha, just in case, So just gonna start just, after the first leg, I'm gonna ramp it up to, hypothetically speaking, you don't really need me to take out the trash this week, right?
Well, I think you can keep costs low because I've heard Magic Mike has now bought a condo across from the Allianz, and he's just gonna rent it to you for really cheap. So it's gonna be no problem.
You absolutely love to see it. I'm here for it. So, I almost started talking about players right now, but forgive me if I'm already celebrating this win. But it completely bypassed Martinelli, and this is it's going to be officially Video's favorite part of the podcast.
You're trying to duck the Breo test. I see what
you know. It didn't really add much. Like, we had already gone through the tie, so we don't really need to discuss it, Chris. So it's kind of like, whatever, right? It's, what do we call it in the States? Garbage time stats. Doesn't really matter.
Those are fighting
words. A clip floated around my timeline, and it was Lee Gunner on EFTV. Now, hold your strong opinions if you have strong opinions on EFTV, but the clip popped up on my timeline, and I decided to listen to it. It was not Lee Gunner. I think I said Lee Gunner, but it was Lee Judges, in case I did say that earlier. Lee Judges was talking about how much of a team player Martinelli is. And one of the people on our back channel made a throwaway comment prior to the goal and said, all Martinelli needs to do is waste time and stretch their defense. And I didn't respond to Tim at that point. You guys both know Tim. And I thought to myself, must be nice that the bar is so fucking low. That's what I thought. That's initially what I thought, 100%. And as the game went on, I was like, okay, I could see how much of a pain in the ass he is. And you guys know, I've been very critical of his final third actions, right? But I guess, man, I've always said this. There's a way fans view players, and there's a way Arteta views players. And maybe he's doing exactly what Arteta wants. So I guess in times like this, it is good for me to take a back seat from the heavy criticism of somebody maybe not what I view as like not finishing their dinner, not being too risky. And I'm like, on the flip side, the other guy on the right side is in the box more. He's taking more shots. So I guess tactically, who the hell am I to make the judgment that, X player is horrible and Y player is great? So Martinelli gets his flowers. My applauds. He was epic, not only because of the goal, but he ran Lucas Vasquez fucking insane the entire night. It was absolutely amazing. And it's nice when a utility player in a sense, that works so hard for the team and maybe doesn't get to the opportunities to put themselves in like the goal scoring shiny kind of position. It's nice when a hard working player like Martinelli gets his flowers in the form of a goal. So, Chris, talk about a flip and celebrate. Oh, mind you, I forgot to tell you, just a little funny story between both goals. Saka scores. I lose my shit. I have to turn off the game to go pick up my son. I drive for 2 minutes. I turn on the stream. We're 1-1. Yeah. I'm watching it. I have to turn it off because I'm going into the crowd. We get back into the car. I turn it on. We're 2-1. So I completely missed both of those goals, by the way.
Oh, jeez.
For us. Just mind you, I just watched the last 40 seconds of the goal. But talk to me a little about not only exclusively the goal, Chris. We're gonna kind of have to segue into individual players. So don't analyze Martinelli exclusively just the goal. Absolutely talk about it, but feel free to praise him and chat to me overall and how you're feeling about him.
I mean, it reminds me of goals we've had in the past against teams like Chelsea. A couple of them actually off of corners. One of them I remember. Well, one of them was not quite the same. Where off a corner, I think it was a Willian corner when he was in at Chelsea. We had the ball out and it goes to Martinelli, and Martinelli dribbles by a slipping Conte. If you guys remember that one, he takes it all the way and scores 1v1. But there's another one where I believe it was also Martinelli. I can't remember who it was against. It was off a corner. We get the ball. Odegaard's at the top of the D, and he bends a beautiful ball, probably a 30 or 40-yard ball, into Martinelli's path. And Martinelli, I don't know if he scored an open goal because the goalkeeper was pushed up or whether it was a 1v1, but we've seen this goal before is what I'm trying to say. And I think it's a product of playing teams that love to play open with that feel like they need to come at us in order to score. And I think a lot of teams feel that way, especially at their big clubs where like they're not going to sit there and bunker and try to hit on the counter because that's, small ball, or they know they're outmatched. That's the only way they can keep it close is to just set up a nasty mid block or low block and hope we make a mistake and they can capitalize on it. Like Real Madrid is not going to do that kind of stuff. They're too proud to play Everton ball or pick your small team ball in the Premier League kind of game. And they just needed goals. They're going to push players up higher. They don't have the backline speed that Martinelli poses. And so I think we took really great advantage of that. I think it could have been easy for us to just get the ball, recycle possession, keep it, not try to go for the second goal. It was late in the game. Just time waste, put it into the corner, be professional about it. But I love that we wanted the win. And I think ultimately, that's what we wanted. And we saw it at 93 or whatever it was. We knew we had the tie won, and it was about, let's get a win at the Bernabeu. And so Marino takes a couple dribbles, sees that run from Martinelli. I think he knows that even though Martinelli has run his socks off all game, that Martinelli can beat. Who was it that he beat for pace? Was it Vasquez or was it somebody else? I can't remember who it was.
Maybe.
Who was it?
Was it Asensio or was he already subbed out? He was subbed out.
The guy who he beat was short and kind of stocky, and I don't know who it was, but in any case, Martinelli beats him for pace, pulls away in the end. The guy knows he's beaten and pulls up and prays that Martinelli doesn't slot it home on restyle. And Martinelli has the wherewithal, has the composure, knows what's at stake, knows it's on the line, wants the glory, and slots it home past Courtois. So awesome goal. We've seen it before from Martinelli, but not on this kind of stage. And I think that's a real credit to his mentality, his willingness to put Fran Garcia. Thank you. I think the work he's doing in training in terms of his end product, because I know that like a Martinelli of 3 or 4 months ago may have hit that right into the keeper or kicked it wide or over dribbled. That was as confident a finish I've seen him make in a long time. And I hope that that's a sign of the Martinelli of 2022, 23 coming back, because we need that Martinelli if we're gonna continue to progress in this competition, but also if we're gonna do big things next year. In terms of his overall game, I think it was really important that he played like Martinelli plays. I think his greatest attribute is his engine, and I think he does so much hard work on that left-hand flank. And I think that's where a lot of the threat comes for Madrid, if I'm being honest, because Mbappe spent a lot of time on that right-hand side. Rodrigo, I know people don't really rate him in the live chat. I think he's a good player. He's not Saka, but he can hurt you. And especially in the Champions League, he's got a great return in terms of goals and assists. So you can't take that side lightly. And, we've got an 18-year-old who is playing out of his skin, but still inexperienced. You've got a Kivior who had a great first leg, but he's not Gabriel, but he's had a great tie. Take nothing away from him, but I think Martinelli took it upon himself to take responsibility for playing both sides of the game, both the out of possession and in possession. And we know he does that really well. And I think he really supported that left-hand side in defense so that we could really snuff out their attack coming out of that side. And I think, again, credit to him. He did great. I think he was a threat all game long. I think they played a higher line, and therefore they had to always be aware of where he was standing, because as soon as we could turn them over, we could always get the ball up to him as an outlet, and we could always be a threat on that side. And I think he stood in the right areas. He pressed really well. He defended when he needed to, and he gave all the energy he had, which he always does. So want to give him his flowers. It was a great all-around game for Martinelli.
That run at the end, I almost expected it to see more throughout the game, right? Because you knew Madrid had to go for it, and that was probably going to be an outlet, especially with Vasquez out there. So to see it in so late in the game, I think I saw a comment on Twitter. Somebody said testing for PEDs, because to make that run in the 93rd minute after playing how he played all game was amazing. And I know in the back channel too, we've talked about how our approach as a team, right, has changed overall to control the game a lot more. And we usually have way more possession, against most teams. And it's probably kind of taken away from him a little bit, right? His game's definitely, to counter, get out and run and stretch. And his success and stats have maybe come at a cost of how we've changed and evolved as a team. And then to compare him on the other side to Saka, it's so hard, right? To have the guy opposite of you maybe be, again, one of the top wingers in the world. And now you have to play every game with him and say, like Hearns was saying, well, he gets in the box, he scores goals, he creates a little bit more. Why can't you do that? Well, very few people can, right? So, Martinelli definitely has his games and moments, and he definitely has his doubters as well. So, at the end of the day, it's good to see everyone, especially him, get a goal and have that work pay off for what he usually does more often than not.
Yep.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I just heard my son say something to my wife. I'm gonna go check up on her real quick. We're gonna move into the praising part of the conversation, if you will. So I was gonna throw Kivior your way, Dean. I thought he's doing outstanding, considering that he's been on the shelf for, I don't know, the majority of this league. He doesn't get a whole lot of opportunities. He gets thrown into a few league games. You could argue it looks a little bit rusty, but it's easy to justify that because he doesn't get a lot of game time. So it's always game time fitness for his actual training. And look, Madrid has one of the most dangerous, forwards in the world. Mbappe's lethal. Vinny Jr. could be a pain in the ass. I have mixed feelings on Rodrigo. Sorry, Evideo. And I think he's done remarkably good. And if he doesn't end up staying at Real Madrid, at the very least, he's earned himself a nice transfer fee for an Italian club that tries to kidnap him. So, Dino, start off with Kivior. If I'm not back, Chris, insert whatever player you want to praise, or you could bash Udegaard for a few minutes. I will be right back.
Yeah. So, obviously, when Gabriel goes down, right, most of us probably were wanting to give our firstborn up for him not to need surgery and be out a long time. And Kivior has obviously had his good and bad moments. So you don't really know what you're getting, like Mike said, with him not playing too much and then going into 2 Champions League quarterfinals against Real Madrid, right? So obviously, most, if not all, Arsenal fans he was probably the one we were most worried about. Yep. And aside from that little bobble, like 2 minutes into the first leg, he was maybe flawless, right? In terms of what we see from him and what we would really expect. I couldn't ask any more of him. Even in the league, was it Fulham right over the weekend?
Yep.
He's not one that for a defender like him, the less you see of him and the less Mustafi moments he has, the better, right? So he's come in as if he belongs, and again, he's probably another one who is going to start for the majority of teams around the world. he just has, again, one of the top maybe 3-5 center backs in front of him in Gabriel. So it's one of those things to where, you know, the player's there. It's just the opportunity is not there, and you have to give a guy flowers when, you know, someone goes down and it's next man up, and that's been our season for the most part of, you know, fill in and do the job, and here we are. We're really not skipping too many beats, at least, you know, in Europe. So.
Yeah, I had nightmares about his game against Bayern in the Champions League last year. If you guys remember, I think it was Sane who did him on the halfway line.
Yeah.
When Kivior was playing left back, and Kivior did not take the yellow and bring him down, which I think was a bit naive. And I think we were all scarred in thinking that Kivior maybe just couldn't, quote unquote, defend at this level. I think what we didn't realize was if you move him out of left back, which I don't think he is, at least not I don't think he can play the inverted left back role. I don't think he's quite fast enough or physical enough to play 1v1 against wingers all game long. What I do think we've learned though in this tie is that he's actually quite a really good left-sided defender, center back, and he can even do it in the back too, but I'm sure he's tremendous in the back three as well. I think his on the ball passing is super underrated. And I know, Mike, you called him more of a traditional center back in our channel, and I actually think he's quite good on the ball. But I think what he actually showcased in this tie that I didn't know he had was his positioning sense, but also his just willingness to get a little bit dirty and grimy. I remember a play in this match. I don't remember if it was first half or second half. There was an aerial ball. It was kind of bobbling around, and you know, it's a real physical with like four guys in there trying to compete for this ball. And he wins the ball. He kind of heads it back, and he turns around, and if he doesn't play it securely, you know, one of the offensive players that were around him could have easily won that second ball and slotted it home. And he just calmly heads the ball back under pressure to Raya, who's standing, 3 yards behind him, but also only like 2 yards in front of his own goal mouth. And so I think his composure, his positioning, I think we've all been kind of underimpressed or not impressed with his positioning. I think his positioning has been spot on for the vast majority of this two legs, and I think his sturdiness, his combativeness, his willingness to get in a duel as Arteta loves, and to win a duel, if you will, in this tie has been really, really admirable. So I couldn't be happier. I think him playing at this level is a good reason why we only conceded only one goal, and we probably should have only conceded 0 goals in these two legs. And I think him and Saliba make a good partnership. I mean, obviously he's not going to displace Gabriel. I hope he stays, but he's a guy that if he wants to go play as a starter week in, week out, I think he's increased the demand for him among more clubs, and therefore I think the kind of transfer fee we can get back for him. So again, I hope he stays. I think replacing that kind of player who, you know, is a backup at that level is tough. And I can't believe I'm saying that because, you know, a couple months ago, I was like, Kivior is gone. Like he just can't quite do it for us at this level. And I think now he's shown us on the biggest stage that he can, as long as we play him in the right position, surrounded by the right players. I think we can't forget that he's flanked by Declan Rice, who's playing at a world-class level right now. I mean, I don't think I've seen a midfielder play as well as Declan Rice is for Arsenal since Cesc or Vieira. I mean, that's a huge compliment, but I think he's playing out of his skin. And Miles Lewis-Skelly is playing insanity well, and he's got.
I don't understand how it's possible.
Yeah, for sure. And he's got both those guys playing on his side, so he's got a lot of support. But from that platform of support, he is able to, play his best football because he's got the confidence of the players around him, and he's got confidence in the players around him. I think that matters a lot for a young guy who hasn't played on this stage ever. along with most of the guys that are in the squad, to be honest.
Just picking up on the Melo Skelly thing, how good he is and the confidence that he breeds and how he conducts himself. It's my son again. World record. He wants his doll right now. I'm gonna go help him maybe. How good he is astonishing in the sense that he's 18 and it kind of allows Arteta to make different decisions with the starting lineup in the sense that Ben White, he's played a handful of minutes already. So in knowing Ben White in the history of him playing through pain, he would have 100% played this game at right back and Timber played at left back if Arteta asked him to. But it almost feels like Arteta was like, Ben White, don't worry. Timber got us on the right, and Miles Lewis-Skelly has us on the left. And again, being 18, and it was really early in the game, like 5-10 minutes in, where he grabbed the ball. He was practically a left eight. He was in midfield, and he just turned somebody over and made a pass, or somebody, I think they fouled him. And we all unanimously were like, man, the ball's on this fucking kid. Like, he doesn't care. He gets ownership. And it's spectacular that he came into fruition. He wasn't even expecting to get that many minutes this season. So from that to we have to buy a left back in the summer because Tierney's leaving to we're good. He's not only a great squad player to have because he could cover left back. No. He could easily start games and give whoever, Calafiori, Timber, whoever plays on the left back next season, rest and maybe even potentially in the midfield. So he never ceased to amaze me. I'm going to throw Declan Rice into this conversation because, Chris, you alluded it. Funny enough, maybe like 2-3 weeks ago, potentially even longer, I was having a difficult time justifying the 100 million price, right? Hey, Dean, you smirk, but hey, man, I've always said this. I have zero problems making an ass out of myself and giving my unpopular opinions if I kind of I in my twisted mind could justify it. But like, hey, man, I'm gonna throw them out there, and if the world decides to laugh for a little bit, I'm like at my expense, I'm all for it. So my big thing, as Chris knows, is I have a big problem, Chris and Dean. I have a big problem paying 100 million for a defensive midfielder, and I always thought you hit that 100 million bracket, you need to do something going forward. Now, maybe I hadn't noticed it, but I feel like Declan Rice, the last 2 games versus Madrid, just hit new fucking heights. Like I made the joke after the first leg where I told you guys, are we going to have to drug test this guy after this game? He was flipping everywhere, dude. And then this game, he was fucking everywhere. Like he was doing interceptions at minute like 80 something, like tucked in between our center backs. His ability, I mean, he was already good. I knew he was really good at the defensive side. It's what he did on offense in the final third where I'm like, why are you currently creating more than Odegaard right now? Now, we could talk about Odegaard and if we want to be a little bit of a downer because he didn't have the most stellar performance out there. But Declan Rice, for me, the last 2 games versus Madrid hit new levels and he made me feel like I'm comfortable with Zubimendi coming in if that is what the club is going to do and to keep him at left 8. I was kind of dreading the idea, like, no, just put him back at 6, Like, don't do this. And the way he's been performing, I'm like, fuck it, just leave him out there. Like I don't know if it's a confidence thing, maybe it's something that I completely overlooked. You guys could tell me otherwise, but I just feel the last 2 games he was like, big game, no fucking problem. I'm going to handle this shit. So have I been completely missing this part of Declan Rice game the entirety of the last 2 seasons, Chris? Or is this something that, even in your perspective, he's kind of upped it a little bit?
He's upped it a bit, but I also think we're playing a team that plays wide open. Which helps.
That a lot in England. That's true.
I mean, in England, I saw somebody screenshotted our last 4 results, and they were like, and I think the caption was, "We're a funny club," and it was 1-1 against Everton, and then 3-0 win against Real Madrid, and then a 1-1 versus Brentford, and then a 2-1 win against Real Madrid. And I think that little graphic demonstrated to me just how we are played so differently against quote unquote the smaller clubs in England versus the top of the European table in the Champions League. We're, again, as I said before, we're not going to have a Bayern, a PSG, a Barcelona, a Real Madrid, a Liverpool, maybe a Liverpool, a nasty mid block or low block, and then try and counter us to death. We're just not going to encounter that, because that nullifies what they do best. And they think that they have a right to play front-footed football. So they're going to play wide and expansive. And we've seen time and time again. We saw this against City. We saw this against PSV, where we beat them 7-1. We've seen teams, when they want to go toe-to-toe with us and play open and expansive football, we hurt teams really badly. And we don't care who you are. We don't care what badge you have on your shirt. We don't care what kind of individual talent you have in attack. We will absolutely mess you up if you want to play open football. And we do it time and time again. And we've shown that. And so I think that is part of what we're seeing in Dec's offensive game recently is that openness through midfield for him to just carry the ball 40 yards and either lay it off to a Martinelli to his left, or I guess in the case of the Brentford goal, I guess this is I'm going against what I just said, but in the Brentford goal that we got where Dec basically dribbles the ball 40 yards, hands it off to Partey, and Partey scores, but Dec does all the hard work. But what I think we're seeing here is when there are game states and when there are teams that are willing to play an open, expansive game where there's holes in the midfield to exploit, Declan's really good at that. He's a really good carrier of the ball. He's got an engine that goes for days. I think he's got confidence now in not just playing the defensive side of the game, but to trust his ball carrying ability, which he's always had, but not quite sure he's always felt like he was able to express himself in an Arsenal shirt doing that. And so he's done it on the biggest stage multiple times. Now, I think he's playing a box-to-box role, because I think in attack, he's occupying spaces in that left 8 zone. But when we're in defense, he is playing in that 4-4-2 block as one of the two in the center of midfield, almost like a double 6 is. So I think that's the perfect position for him, because he can give us defensive solidity when we don't have the ball, but he can give us that attacking prowess that I think he's developing when we're in attack. And I think not only is he kind of making up for maybe what Odegaard's not giving us right now in terms of end product or final ball product in the final third, I think Moreno is also doing that with his 2 assists today. I mean, that ball he threads to both Saka for the goal and to Martinelli for the goal is perfectly weighted. It looks like an Odegaard pass just off his right foot in both occasions. And I think those two guys stepping up on the offensive end has made Odegaard's lack of form easier to swallow. And I think you're right, Mike. We're seeing a whole other level that Declan has risen to. I mean, he's put corner kicks into his tool belt this year. He's put set pieces, free kicks into his tool belt this year. He is becoming a complete all-around midfielder in a way that I'm not sure anybody envisioned he'd become, even though we spent $100 million on him.
Yeah, I mean, apparently you guys didn't watch or listen to West Ham Central. Declan is a captain of a European champion, right? So
that's the peak of his existence. Can ever get better.
He has the European pedigree. But no, even if you go back to last year and towards the end of last year, beginning of this year, if you listen to any interviews he's given and people ask him about the goals and just the offensive output, he said from day one, Mikel said, hey, like, I want you to get forward and I want you to be a threat going forward. And at the beginning, he's like, that's not my game. And, he wasn't really comfortable with it. And, now we're a year later. And I think last year he's had 7 goals, they said, overall, maybe in the league, which was his most ever. And he's on 6 or 7 again right now. So it is another example of Mikel seeing something that even the player himself didn't really see, and instilling that confidence and putting him in the positions to succeed. And Declan's playing out of his mind and in form. MLS, Lewis Skelly, there was a stat I saw that over the 2 legs, he was the highest rated defender for both legs of any team. So, again, an 18 years old to be putting up these kind of games, the Bernabeu is insane. And, for someone who we thought at the beginning of the year was just going to be, a youth player who maybe gets a little bit of go here and there, he's kind of taken that step and even is distancing himself from someone like Ethan, who really isn't playing too much now that Bukayo's back. But, when the lineup sheet comes out, Lewis Skelly's on it week in and week out, and he's earned that right.
100%.
One of the last players I wanted to make sure to praise, because I just think it's astonishing the amount of minutes that he's placing in. And I guess as a supporter that doesn't watch Dutch football too much, we couldn't quite quantify how much Timber would add to our squad. And, starts last season and he goes out into Community Shield, and we just don't see him for the entirety of the season, right? And we're thinking effectively, as far as numbers, we're missing a player. That sucks because we're low on numbers. But then you have the opportunity to see him play, and you almost and to see how he conducts himself and everything. And you can understand why when he left Ajax, he had so much love from the club and fans. And my goodness, dude, I know sliding door moments thing is kind of like a sporting thing. And I know that from the outside, if you're a non-Arsenal supporter, you're kind of thinking you're making excuses. But the last 2 years, realistically, you start 2 years ago, you start thinking Saliba doesn't get injured. And now the manner in which Timber plays defensively and offensively, and how much of a pain in the ass and how good he is at locking attackers down, it kind of makes you feel like, fuck, if we only had him last season. And again,
yeah,
listen, I don't think any rival fan is going to listen to us, because we're not out here, CUNTing off players and being hyperbolic. So we're never going to be the rival fans watch type of videos. So we're never going to be on those things. So we don't get that type of traction. But it's astonishing. Timber is just absolutely amazing. You ask him to play left back, sure. Right back, sure. I think he's done center back for us this season as well, sure. Not only is he incredibly strong, but his technical ability is through the roof. His intelligence is through the roof. Can't tell you how much I love this player, and I think I said this a few pods ago. It's easy to think that Timber on the left, Ben White on the right, and then Saliba and Gabriel is probably by far our best back four, and that's excluding Lewis Skelly, which is absolutely massive. But it's just insane. I needed to give Timber his flowers, because he's been absolutely insane. El Grande Arsenalo is a little disappointed that we're not giving Sterling his love. We hate to break the news to you, but unfortunately, news reports suggested a few weeks ago that Arsenal decided, get this, to not sign Sterling to a permanent deal for Arsenal. So, listen,
I am shook.
If you are Kroenke out for this, I'm not going to be the guy to blame you, okay? Because this is a massive blow. So, all my flowers have been given. Chris, Dean, any of you, do you guys have any honorable mentions that you guys want to throw out there? I think you touched upon Merino a little bit. I don't know if you want to expand on it a little bit, Chris.
If I say anything that I feel like I've said all I needed to say about Merino. I think he has really insulated us as a club from the loss of our starting two strikers, starting caliber strikers in Jesus and Havertz. And I think he's done a really good approximation or a facsimile of what Havertz does with, dare I say it, perhaps, no, I'm not going to say it because I don't know if it's true. There's too much of a small sample size, but I think he is quite an accomplished ball striker, which I didn't expect from a DM. And as I said before, the touch on some of his passes today were absolutely perfect. I mean, perfectly weighted balls, not just from 5 yards for the Saka pass, but the 25 yards pass he makes to Martinelli right in stride made it so easy for Martinelli just to sprint and beat his man and get into a shooting position. So I can't say enough good things about him. I think maybe an honorable mention, aside from the holding on to the ball too long in the box, but Saliba, I mean, man, did he take that matchup against Mbappe seriously. I remember Mbappe gets the ball right on the edge of the 6-yard box, and Mbappe's doing all his little dancing, and Saliba's not buying any of it. And all of a sudden, Mbappe makes his move. Saliba steps right in front of his path and blocks him out, and the ball goes over the touchline. And it was at that moment that I knew Mbappe had been defeated, that he was not going to score, because Saliba took it personally. He was not going to let a compatriot who plays for Real Madrid, who wanted to get the better of us by either through his speed, through his finishing ability, or through his willingness to flop everywhere. He was not going to be outdone by his compatriot from France. And I thought Saliba absolutely made Mbappe a non-factor. Yeah, so I think he deserves a lot of credit for that, because that is not an easy front three to stop. And I think Mbappe is probably the toughest one to stop. And a lot of us were asking, where is Mbappe outside of, the penalty shot against Rice? And the first 2 minutes of the first leg, outside of that, Mbappe was an absolute non-factor. And I think a lot of that has to do with the way that Saliba played him.
Yeah. I'm trying to weight how good Saliba is versus, I'm going to say, how bad Mbappe played. Because I made a comment today where I was like, for being Henry's heir, Mbappe is kind of lacking that aura, if you will. And maybe I'm downplaying him. He's an outstanding player. He's won World Cups, et cetera, et cetera. But I was kind of thinking to myself, fuck, dude, he seems so incredibly flat this game. But Saliba does do crazy things.
Well, this is what Henry thinks of that. So dude, I love this. Is my new profile pic on Twitter. I love Henry's face there. I love it.
Yeah.
So smug, so arrogant, so Thierry. I absolutely love it.
I went to our pictures and I thought to myself, I forgot to put this up for when I was talking about Timber, and essentially it's that meme where the Timber cycle or the cycle of, and Timber cycle effectively is have a good game, have a good game, have a good game, and have a good game.
He's
and
so
then rinse and repeat. And he just consistently repeats. I just thought it was funny that when I chimed into the media, I noticed that you added another 6-7 slots there.
Oh, I did. I want to do a little photo. Yeah, see? Okay, let me do this.
Gabriel celebrating with his family.
Gabriel's celebration of Martinelli's goal with his family. I'm guessing he's at home in London where he's recuperating.
If you're watching this video, if you just go to Twitter and just put Gabriel celebrating or something, the guy in the hat, okay, second 3, this guy in the hat is jumping on Gabriel, and he's celebrating, but you'll see for a split second Gabriel does the "don't you fucking jump on me" thing, because his leg is right there. It's a split second, but you could see it in Gabriel's face where you're don't just stay the fuck away from me.
Yeah, I want to be back on this pitch.
And he goes, he just goes back to celebrating. The Timber 1-5,
dude.
Amazing.
He posts 4 hours before the game his typical Bible verse is Joshua 1:5, and I joked we should call him Prophet Timber, because apparently he sees into the future, because the aggregate score was 1-5. I thought that was clever by whoever posted that. I have no idea who this person is, but clever nonetheless. Twitter doing its job. I mean, this pick is absolutely cold. It's Thierry Henry shushing the Bernabeu in 2006, I think, when he scored to make it 1-0, and Saka doing the same thing on his goal to make it 1-0. And then this one cracked me up. I don't know if you guys follow Laura Kirk Francis. She's hilarious on Twitter. But she started a petition on change.org to force Martin Odegaard to shave off his beard. It's like the anti-Samson.
He was better.
Yeah, He's like better when he's like clean shaven, and he gets weaker when he has facial hair. So she thinks he should shave off his beard, and I tend to agree.
Makes all the sense in the world to me. Dean, did you want to add anybody to the list of players that you want to praise, and or if you feel compelled to, I don't know, talk some smack about a Real Madrid player, you could also do that if you like.
No, so my flowers were actually just going to be for actually this coaching staff and for Arteta, right? Like,
I like that.
How that they've done with this season and how it could have definitely gone down the drain totally. And looking, I think it might have been Kelly in the group chat mentioned that we had like 2.5 real players on the bench today. I'm looking at it right now. The subs that we didn't bring on were Neto, Setford, Jimmy Gower, Butler Ajoy, Jack Francis, Sterling, Michael Rosiak, and Ethan. Half of those guys I've never heard of. And that was our bench for the Champions League game.
Such a plastic, Dean.
I know, right? So, the fact that
followed their career their whole lives.
The fact that we go into the Bernabeu and with, really having Trossard, Tierney, and Zinchenko, the ones who were subbed on, being maybe, and Ethan being really the only viable options on the bench, it is amazing to see that we're now in the semifinals of the Champions League. We're still second place in the Premier League, even though it's a distant second, but we've held on to that. And then you look at where Spurs and Man United and some of those teams are, who have had similar injuries, and they've had a lot, but their season's just gone totally tits up. And we're just maintaining, and it's next man up mentality. And Moreno, like we said, who was our 5th or 6th choice midfielder for the majority of the season, now has probably 10 goal contributions within the last 2-3 months, if not more. And he was already covering for Kai Havertz, who really wasn't even a striker either to begin with. And Lewis Skelly's come in, and just all the changes and all the people that we've had to bring in and change, but the system is the same, and the beat goes on. And really is a testament to the entire staff of, it doesn't matter who's in there really. You have the job, what you're supposed to do, and they're putting the confidence in the guys who go out there to do it.
By the way, Alan in the live chat's totally right about Saliba owning Mbappe, and he takes it seriously. I was trying to remember a tackle that he made against Mbappe. I think when Mbappe was at PSG and Saliba was at Marseille, I think. Anyways, I've just found the picture, and he perfectly tackles Mbappe on this play as well. But he did something similar today, not against Mbappe, I don't believe. I think it was against Vinny or Rodrigo. I think it was Saliba that perfectly tackles. Maybe it was Timber. I can't remember. Anyways, somebody perfectly tackled a player in the penalty box today, and it reminded me of that tackle that Saliba put on Mbappe. Mbappe has found no joy against that man, and perhaps Mbappe might be the single most reason why Saliba doesn't come to Real Madrid, because he doesn't want to have to face him in training every day. So it might ruin Mbappe's fragile ego if he has to come up against Saliba more than once a year. So, which is good for us.
He already sees him too much in France, so.
I will allow Mbappe to come to Arsenal and play backup to Merino.
Nope. Don't want him. Nope.
Yeah. Was it Kelly or Sebi that called that years ago, saying, "Nah, keep him away"?
It was one of us, maybe multiple of us. I think the stat that today that I saw that I think demonstrates why as talented as he is in the offensive end, doesn't fit what we do, is we as a club, we as a team ran 8.5 kilometers further than PSG today. And I think that's due in part to Mbappe not wanting to play both ways. He's got Messi syndrome, where Messi works really hard when he's got the ball, when his team plays an attack, but he does absolutely nothing when the other team has the ball. And I think Mbappe feels like he's too good for that. And I heard a podcast this week. Elliot from AVP was on it with a podcaster, a Real Madrid podcaster, and he was talking about how Vinny used to press a lot last year and the year before in a Real Madrid shirt, and as soon as Mbappe came, he stopped doing it because he felt like, well, if Mbappe doesn't have to press, then I don't either. And it's that kind of personality that I think destroys a collective, cohesive unit that I think Arteta has worked so hard to cultivate at Arsenal, which is why we can be a team that doesn't allow a team like Real Madrid to sniff the goal, because we play so hard, we run so much out of possession because the whole team is willing. Nobody has an ego so high that they're not willing to work hard for each other. No one is too good to put in the hard yards. No one gets paid too much to say I'm going to sprint down the pitch and get in a position before the other team does. And I think the problem with Real Madrid when they face up against a team like us is that they've got a couple guys in that team that aren't willing to do that, and he's one of them. And that's the reason why I wouldn't want him, unfortunately. Aside from the financial ramifications of it, we can't afford a transfer for Mbappe. We probably can't afford his wages without selling some players. All that aside, I think he doesn't fit that collective, cohesive unit that we've built. That I think he would have a massive negative effect on. Could be unpopular, but that's my opinion.
As it's funny too, right? PSG are invincible in the league right now, and in the semifinals of the Champions League without him.
Yeah,
you can argue they're a better collective team without him than they were with him. So,
great point.
He just goes to show, and to even get to not only just Mbappe on that team with Madrid, having a guy like Bellingham who is great going forward, but probably, like you said, he really doesn't put in those hard yards and doesn't really, for a complete midfielder that, we're praising Rice for, you don't see that from him too much either. So it seems like they have a lot of guys who, want that Galactico title, but aren't really putting in the effort to get there. And even with today watching the game with my friends, they were like, we want Toni Kroos back. We need Modric back from the last couple of years, where these guys are going to be the unsung heroes, but they're the ones who are doing the work. And Benzema or Bale or Ronaldo, whoever, they get the love, but you have the solid defense, you have the midfielder guys who are going to put in the complete performance. And Madrid right now just has a bunch of me guys, especially up top, and then going back to Bellingham, and then a bunch of defenders who really can't defend. They've had some injuries, right? But playing Alaba at left back against Saka is not probably what most teams want to do. I think they said that in the first leg it was Alaba's first game at left back in 6 years, so that's not ideal for them. And then they're having to play Valverde at right back the first leg, so it's still Real Madrid, right? But this probably isn't close to a Real Madrid team that we've expected, even with their recent success and being the defending champions. It's definitely a different mentality for them.
Good question by Ray in the chat. What do you think about the ref today? I saw some hard tackles, and I was so sure if they continued, someone was getting a red card. I'm the kind of guy that, if you can at all help it, I like to keep a game 11v11. You ruin the spectacle, as Michael Oliver or Howard Webb or whoever said that. You didn't want to send him off because you didn't want to ruin the spectacle. At some level, I empathize with that perspective, because at the end of the day, sport is entertainment, and it exists for fans who need a distraction from every day, or just want to see a competitive game. They want to see a dramatic game, and I think going 11v10 does in fact ruin that, as long as you are protecting player safety. I think the one tackle that I think could have gotten a red today, a straight red, that wasn't, was Rudiger stomping on Miles Lewis-Skelly after he pushed him to the ground. that to me looked naughty, and perhaps it's a bit of a reputation call, in that I think he's got a reputation for that kind of stuff. But when you throw a guy to the ground and then you pretend to lose your balance and, oh, I didn't have anywhere else to place my foot, it just so happened to, stud the guy in the stomach, I think that deserves a closer look. Now, perhaps the yellow is appropriate, and you tell that you warn the guy and say, I'm watching you. If you do it again, you're going to get carded again. But I think that deserved a card of some color, potentially red, because I think that's an area where if you stomp hard enough on a guy, and that didn't look light. That looked like he put his full weight on Miles Lewis Skelly in his abdomen. You can really hurt a player, and I don't like to see those bypassed. But in general, and I'm sure Madristas probably hated that ref. I think he did a good job of actually not biting on a lot of the shenanigans and tomfoolery and diving that Madrid tried to do to get the crowd stirred up, to get us booked, to get under our skin. I don't think he allowed Madrid to set the tempo of how the game was going to be officiated. And I think in general, he called a fairly even match. I'm sure he missed some things. Again, the Rudiger one being one of those things, but he was sent over to the monitor twice. I think he made the right call in both situations, for my estimation. I think he played it pretty well.
Yeah, I think on the balance of things, it was pretty good. And just to your point, Chris, the Real Madrid players were asking for a few fouls and like corners that they had literally zero, like literally arguing with the ref. And like there was one clear one with like it was a corner for Mbappe was asking for a corner. And I'm like, bro, the ball literally bounced. Like, there's zero way of even thinking that was a 50-50. I'm like, what are you doing? And they spent a lot of time barking at the ref, and the ref was having none of it. It was pretty remarkable. I'm not used to it, at the very least.
I hope
was Saliba, right?
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
There's one he missed where I think Vinny or someone had a shot, Mbappe maybe, and it went off Saliba's foot. And it was clearly a goal kick, and a corner, and he gave us a goal kick. Aside from that, he didn't miss much. And in Madrid, going back to like Rudiger and stuff, they were going down easy, but then they were also, literally throwing players around. Right? There's one time where I think it might have been Valverde threw Luis Skelly to the ground pretty late. Rudiger had a late challenge on, I think, Moreno after he'd released the ball like 3 seconds, and then he came in. There was a corner where Rudiger threw Timber into the goal for, just standing there. So again, there was, like I said, Rudiger had probably about 3 or 4 fouls that could have easily been carded, and he's probably the one who could have been sent off. But aside from that, yeah, I don't think you can be too upset with how the referee performed today.
I just hope that with all the protesting that they did to the ref, that Jurrien Timber hit him with a try harder.
Yeah.
Because I absolutely love that one. Dude.
Somebody posted this on Twitter. It's Lucas Vasquez saying "we tried," and then this account posting that clip, or a picture of the clip where Jurrien Timber is talking to Enzo Maresca when we played Chelsea, and they're going back and forth, and Jurrien Timber goes "try harder," and he shakes Maresca's hand and keeps going. I freaking love that guy, man. I'm getting a Timber jersey next year.
Dude, Timber has to be like he's the nicest prick that you'll ever encounter on the football field, for sure.
He'll call your missus some names, but then he'll smile and shake your hand afterwards, and you feel guilty being mad at him for it. The guy is an absolute legend. I love him.
Love that. Okay. We're going to wrap this show up, boys. It was an absolute pleasure. It's absolutely insane and lovely, quite frankly, to podcast after a great performance. We didn't have to rant about the refs. And, I will say this. I joked around about not liking both French people, but Sebi did kind of stop watching English Premier League because he got tired of the product that the PGMOL was offering. And it is night and day the manner in which you go into to a Champions League game can expecting a fair playing field. Then like we're gonna go play versus Ipswich, and I'm like, let's see what fucking insane thing we're gonna see today.
Well, we still have Barcelona perhaps coming up in the Champions League final. We know how that goes.
No, my bold prediction is they're not making it past Champions League. But let's not do this preview thing, Chris, because you're gonna fulfill Abreu's wish.
2 more hours.
You said 2 more hours. Dean's falling asleep over there. I could see it in his face already. It's late for this poor man. So that will be our official outro. Chris, aka West Suburban EFC, Dean, aka the Chug 31. I've been Mike Hers FC. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on YouTube. Clearly, if you're in the live chat, you already know. If you do listen to us on audio, I always, just as a reminder, head over to YouTube, give us a subscribe and a follow. Subscribe to us if possible, because it helps the YouTube's algorithms and stuff like that. So give us a like, comment, really appreciate that. Boys, I'm going to go to sleep tonight, and I did find out today that I shouldn't be trying new IPAs because this motherfucker is very strong.
8.4%, brother. That'll hit hard.
Maybe 2 isn't the right number for a podcast.
It's like double. It's like double a Pacifico or a Modelo. So yeah, it's more like you just drank 4.
Can't wait to drink the other 3. Cheers, boys. Night, guys. Bye.
Right foot this time, Martin Odegaard.
Zinchenko from Ketchia, it's in, it's 4. Martinelli tiptoeing in. Predatory, perfect. There is a gorgeous arrogance about Arsenal now.
It really is. They are enjoying every second of this.